Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my first episode, my first true episode, really. But good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, whenever you're seeing this video. Hello. I hope you're having a good day. Please take a seat. I'm so happy that you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started. So today is another day of writing. We are in chapter 10 of my Persevering Hearts book 2. Which I'm going to be referring to in these videos as Project Vivian, and I'll explain kind of more about that and what that means. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what this book is about, what Persevering Hearts is about, so you can kind of understand that as we go along with these videos and this journey, that you can kind of understand like the context of what all of this is in. Now, I had the idea for this channel while I was very much halfway or more than halfway done with this novel. So I'm sorry about that, but you know, sometimes the ideas don't come until late, right? And if you're like a writer or any other creative, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we are about halfway through our manuscript, drafting our first draft of my second book, Persevering Hearts, book number 2. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Persevering Hearts, kind of the idea for it, and sort of how it came about. I'm going to try not to go on and on about it. But basically, unfortunately, several years ago, I had a dear friend from England who passed away. Really close friend, very kind of almost like a spiritual bond in a way. It wasn't a relationship, like it wasn't romantic or anything like that. It was very tragic, very sudden, and this person, of course, was very young as well. You know, had their whole life ahead of them and so on and so forth, and it was just tragedy all around. So as kind of a response to dealing with that grief, I started really getting serious about writing. I had been playing around with writing for a few years, not really taking it seriously, but I really got into writing a little bit more, like as kind of a response to this grief. And so I kind of had this idea, what started off as a short story. I posted it online somewhere. No, it is not out there. You won't be able to find it because I deleted it. So anyway, that's how it started. And then the idea to take some of those characters and put them in a novel came to me. And that's how my first book, A List of Reasons Why, coming out August 1st, by the way, shameless plug, came to be. I wanted to explore the grief of losing someone that had that kind of profound effect on me at an early age. And this in writing, and that's ultimately what became my first book, and then ultimately the Persevering Heart series. When I first wrote my first book, I didn't know that it was going to become a series, but over time it kind of revealed itself to me that this definitely has series potential. So a little bit about the series as a whole. Right now I know it's going to be at least 3 books. I would like it to be more than 3. There's other characters that are seen in the first book that I would like to know more about and explore and see what kind of backstory and what kind of, you know, what kind of stuff I can put them through, and seeing how they make it and come out on the other side. That is something I just love to write. I know that for sure. First book is kind of it's a multiple POV, so it winds up being 5 point of views. Again, we have 2 characters that are already dating, 2 characters that were from the short story that were not dating in the short story, but they are in the novel. I wanted them to have the relationship that they deserved, so they were dating in the first book. Unfortunately, one of those characters does have to pass away. That happens at the midpoint of the book. And then the character who passes away has a mutual friend between him and his boyfriend, and like their friend group. And this mutual friend kind of comes in and kind of watches over the main character of the novel. A relationship, like feelings start to form between the 2 of them. You're looking out for somebody who's lost someone that meant something to them very special, but also now you're having feelings for that same person. How does that make you feel? And you're also facing like tough expectations from parents, and you're also struggling with your own identity. You know, I've always been straight. Why am I starting to have feelings for this guy? Juxtaposed with, I don't want to date anybody else because I loved this person, and now I'm starting to have feelings for that person, and am I being unfaithful to that person? You know, how can I move on? How can I make that work? That's the juxtaposition, the kind of struggle that my first book explores. We do have some other POVs, a couple of female characters, kind of more side characters, side subplots going on that I felt was appropriate for the book. I wanted to explore a female character who has an alcoholic mother and has to kind of grow up way too soon and start taking care of the house. You know, making sure that her, you know, younger brothers have everything they need, and that sort of thing. And then I have another female character who is, you know, from a family of wealth, and she thinks that everyone is kind of meant to be in service of her, and she gets into a relationship with someone and she doesn't really take him all that seriously, but eventually over time she realizes that, oh, he actually is someone important, he actually means something to me, and you know, I need to get better. So we kind of explore a little bit of that subplot between those four main characters, but in the first half of the book there's a fifth point of view as well. So that is just a brief kind of teaser as to what the first book is about. Now, the second book is introducing some characters that we see in the first book. A mother of one of my main characters in the first book. We go into her point of view. We start to kind of see like her side of things. It'll be very clear in the first book that one of my male main characters' father has high expectations, and he's quite abusive. Actually, he's abusive, and he's probably a bit narcissistic, that sort of thing. And it's clear. I make that pretty clear in the first book how he is from the point of view of one of my male main characters. And this male main character's mother is very much like not defending him, okay? Not defending this main character. Always siding with this abusive, controlling, ridiculous, narcissistic husband of hers. I wanted to explore like how she really felt, because we definitely kind of have some hints, and some very overt, really, that are not really hints, that, you know, she's not actually all that complicit, and she's kind of feeling trapped. So the second book, we kind of see her getting away from that abusive husband, all the while that she's trying to stay connected to her oldest son, and she's feeling like she failed as a mother and has lost her youngest son, her second son. And which, I mean, she did. So, and again, there's events in the first book that I won't get into. But she did lose her first son, and now she's got to get out of this abusive relationship with this crazy maniac narcissistic husband, and figure out what she's going to do. Like, where is she going to go? How is she going to rebuild herself, reclaim her identity, and be the person that she was always meant to be? And there is a romance subplot with her. She did have a former lover before her husband, but he manipulated her and basically got her out of that relationship and in with him. And then she basically knew right away going into this engagement that she was not going to be happy, but she was manipulated into thinking, I need to get into this because this is the only way I'm going to be protected, I'm going to be taken care of. He's promising me the world. And then she's going to learn that, oh, well, I'm just in service of this husband. And it ruins her relationship with her lover. It ruins her relationship for a while with her oldest son. They keep in touch. He's kind of just playing the game just to kind of stay in good graces, and, because he doesn't really like conflict. Whereas second son is just like, nope, you're not going to treat me like that. That's unacceptable. And, you know, he faces the consequences of that. So I'm exploring this female character, reclaiming her identity, finally being the person that she was always meant to be, and reconciling with her two kids. And of course, we're not really going to see the second son in the second book, but he's going to be on the page a lot, but we're not going to see his point of view. But he's definitely kind of a hidden kind of side character type deal through dialogue and narration and interiority and that sort of thing, through this female main character and through his older brother. So this female main character is named Vivian, which is why Project Vivian is what we're calling this second book. Like I said, I already have a title, but I'm not going to share that right now. I just kind of feel like I need to guard that from YouTube right now, I guess. But Project Vivian is the title, and she is pretty much the main character in this, but this is a dual POV novel. We also see from her oldest son, Kyle's point of view as well. Kyle's in a loving relationship with a lovely man named Nate, and through Kyle, Vivian kind of starts to realize, oh, Nate had what I never could have. You know, I was forced into this relationship with this man that I didn't want to be with. But Nate here has a loving relationship with another man, and I wanted that with my female lover. And that female character's name is Millie. And so what Vivian wanted to have with Millie, but ultimately had it taken away from her by her crazy husband, she sees that Kyle and Nate have that, and she kind of starts to explore, well, you know, how can I reclaim my independence? How can I have that? So she ultimately reconnects with Millie, basically, but she's got to get completely away from Greg first. She can't just escape the house and run away to the city where Kyle lives. It's so much more. And Greg is controlling, and Greg wants to control everything. So we ultimately have to go through that conflict. So we're at the point in the novel where there's been a little bit of conflict between Vivian and Greg, and a little bit between Kyle and Greg too, a little bit, kind of starting to build things up. But now we're kind of in a lull, kind of in a cooling off period. Everything's going good. Vivian's starting to really get her stuff together and starting to make a new life. Vivian is quickly, you know, just becoming her own person. She's starting to make new friends in her new city, and things are just really starting to go well. But we got to eventually have a final conflict where things for a little while are not going to be okay, at least not right away. But spoiler alert, things are eventually going to be okay. And eventually, you know, Vivian will probably have that reconciliation with her oldest son, and then by the end of the book we will see if she can start to reconcile with her youngest son as well. His name is Derek, by the way. Okay, so let me kind of talk about where we're at. So I'm in chapter 10 right now. The plan for this is 17 chapters plus an epilogue. And you can see, I'm going to take you over here and show you, I don't know if I can flip the camera in real time. I cannot. Okay, but I'll show you real quick. You can see that I have a goal, if you can see that, 60,000 words, and I'm about 35,400 words in. And I have a deadline of July 30th, 2026. And I'll show you a little bit of my Scrivener here. I don't know, I'm going to have to see how you all can see that. But basically, I have my chapters listed here, and you can see that they're all kind of color-coded. So the red chapters are Vivian, and the point of view, and the purple is Kyle. So I have that color-coded in my Scrivener. And I'll show you, I have what I'm probably going to refer to as the corkboard outline. Scrivener has a corkboard feature. And I have like a little bit of an outline going on. Very basic. It will change. That's kind of how it goes. And you can see that my corkboard outline, again, just like the chapters, is color-coded. So we're in chapter 10 right now. Again, to kind of catch you up, we start off in the book with, Vivian at home with her husband, and eventually she gets away, and she then goes to the city where Kyle lives. So a lot of a list of reasons why the first book takes place in Nashville and at Tennessee Tech, because I lived there and that's where I went to college. And then this second book starts out taking place in Nashville, Tennessee, and then Kyle's in Atlanta, Georgia, which is another city that has emotional significance to me. So, of course, Kyle and Nate live in Atlanta, and, of course, Vivian has to escape there so that she could then find her identity and reclaim her independence and all of that good stuff. And that's sort of like what Atlanta means to me as well. I've got my Scrivener here on my right side. Again, I did talk about my ChatGPT usage. I do have my ChatGPT over here on my left. Sometimes I have it over on the actual monitor, but today it's on my left side. I won't use my ChatGPT a whole lot. Most of the time, I'll just be typing away in my Scrivener. And, but again, if I am going to go to another tool, I'm going to be very transparent about my process, about what I'm doing, what I'm thinking in the moment, and what I think I need to do. Okay, let's talk about what we're doing in chapter 10. So chapter 10 is in Kyle's point of view. I had a little bit of back and forth on whether or not I wanted it to be his point of view or Vivian's point of view. And chapter 9 was quite a large chapter. It is the largest chapter in the book so far. Chapter 9 was the midpoint chapter of the novel. You figure 17 chapters plus an epilogue. If you just say that's 18, chapter 9 is, a mathematical midpoint, which makes sense. So chapter 9 is kind of like Vivian's midpoint for her arc. Chapter 10, I guess, needs to be Kyle's midpoint for his arc. And his arc is coming to terms with his mom and their relationship and how do they move forward getting away from his father, her husband. So here's what we're doing in chapter 10. So I debated wanting this to be Kyle's point of view because Vivian's going house hunting. She's looking for a house in Atlanta. She's with her realtor today. Her son has also become a real estate agent. The real estate agent that Vivian is using is a friend of Kyle's. I kind of wanted to explore kind of the happy momentum going on with Vivian. We really started to see things shift happily for Vivian, I believe, definitely in chapter 9. But I think maybe even as far back as maybe chapter 7 or chapter 8. I don't have to go back and look. So I wanted to carry the momentum forward, kind of the calm before the storm, because crazy husband is going to show up here soon. And he's kind of always kind of in the back of the mind of my characters. Like Vivian's always kind of constantly worried that he's just going to randomly show up out of nowhere. Kyle is always, kind of thinking about him a little bit too, I feel like. So he's present but off page for now. Things are looking good, but he does eventually have to come back. So right now we're in the part of kind of the overall arc of the story where things are calming down for the characters. Vivian and Kyle are starting to kind of reconcile. Vivian's starting to get her life together in Atlanta. And I really wanted to kind of see Vivian's interiority while she was going and looking through these houses. Because Millie is also in the back of her mind. And as she's looking through these houses. And I thought, well, it would just make sense that while Vivian looks through houses, we can go through her point of view and her interiority. But when you write I feel like when you write a dual POV novel, you need to have equal representation of your character POVs. That maybe it's kind of not right to have like back-to-back chapters of the same character POV. And, I try not to overthink that, but I'm a bad overthinker. You're going to probably find that out pretty quickly. I'm a bad overthinker. So, but I worked it out. I went into ChatGPT and kind of talked it out with Chat and was just like, well, I feel like this should be a Vivian chapter, but we just had a really large Vivian chapter and I just don't know what to do. And ChatGPT was just like, I think you can absolutely do this as Kyle. And basically just kind of encouraged me to like just make good use of dialogue and that sort of thing. And there's ways that we could see how Vivian is feeling, but through Kyle's point of view. And you can always do that, but you just have to decide when you write, is it going to be more effective to have an outsider's perspective, or is it going to be more effective to have an interior perspective, meaning, with the character that's actually having those thoughts and feelings. But I think we can actually have a strong chapter 10 with Kyle's point of view. We need to, because chapter 11 is Vivian point of view again. So I don't want to have 3 chapters in a row of just Vivian. We need to have Kyle's perspective on these things too. So kind of what we're experiencing is Kyle is just kind of, and I'm kind of looking at what I've started writing. I'm already about 1,600 words, give or take, into chapter 10 so far. So, I don't know how long it's going to go. It's going to just go for as long as it needs to. I think we can start to really explore kind of Kyle starting to realize, my mom is really starting to come into her own, and I'm really happy and I'm really proud of her. That's kind of my thought process here. And, she's going to look at these houses, but wait a minute, who is my mom? How did she have all this money all of a sudden? And who's Millie? And, why is it that mom got involved with dad in the first place? So he's going to start having those questions, and he's going to ask those questions. And I think, that's going to happen like towards the end of the chapter, I feel like. And then chapter 11 is going to be, and you got to be careful because you don't want to like info dump necessarily, but chapter 11 is going to be like the heart-to-heart conversation between Vivian and Kyle about her past, why everything was the way that it was, and that sort of thing. It's a heart-to-heart. So the point of that is eventually we're going to start really turning things around for Vivian and Kyle's reconciliation. By the end of the book, they've got to be totally reconciled, totally good, because we're going to see Vivian start to try and bring Derek back into the fold, and Kyle's got to be really instrumental in that. And the third book is going to be that exploration of now Derek coming back around and reconciling with Vivian with the help of Kyle. So that's the premise of this book, is all about what's going on there, and then the plan for the next book. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this, and I will catch you all up. Right now, I'm just writing a moment where Vivian and Kyle and Kyle's friend Ash, who is Vivian's realtor, is going through this house. Definitely needs some work, has some mold going on, but Vivian is definitely enjoying the house so far. I do want to say I kind of have this urge that, for whatever reason, that this is going to be the house that she chooses, but I don't know. At the same time, it's just like, well, this is the first house, why would you choose like the first house that you see? They're going to go look at another one too. So I don't know. Again, overthinking, should this be the house or should we go look at the other house? And then, what? A part of me also thinks that Vivian needs to go and see multiple houses in multiple different areas before she makes a decision. But as, and in real life, perhaps you would do that. But in a novel setting, I probably want to, condense that a little bit. But if you're familiar with the Atlanta area, they're looking at houses in Chastain Park, which is a very gorgeous neighborhood, kind of just north of downtown. Probably, I don't know, about 15-20 minutes from Sandy Springs. That's where Kyle and his partner live. They're not married. This is taking place in 2011, so same-sex marriage was not legalized yet. They've been together for years, and they're basically married at this point. I debated whether she really wanted to look at some houses over by Piedmont Park, because there's some gorgeous older homes over by Piedmont Park in that Virginia Highland neighborhood, if I'm correct. And I particularly, there's a particular house that's near, like, if you're familiar with Atlanta, like Monroe Street and Park Drive, if I'm getting the streets right, where there's a particular house somewhere in that area. I'm not going to say exactly where, that I personally really, really like. And I kind of thought, well, Vivian could have that house. But no, I think for Vivian, I think she's more inclined to look at a place like Chastain Park. And again, this is in 2011. So, you know, right now the houses in that area now are very expensive. But this is 2011, just a few years off of the 2008 crash. Not that expensive. Very doable, very approachable, but being transparent, Vivian has plenty of money. She's got plenty of money. She's fine. But they are looking in Chastain Park. So, back to writing. Okay, taking a stop for a minute, just to kind of update you. So I have written 783 words according to my tracker here on Scrivener. And I'm now up to a total manuscript word count of 36,182. So coming along really good. We're definitely well over halfway to our 60,000 word count goal that we have for the manuscript. Manuscript's probably going to be a bit more than 60,000. Probably going to wind up being more closer to 62 to 65,000. We'll have to see how that plays out. I'd like to try and have a word count goal, but most of my chapters tend to be somewhere in the 25 to 35, maybe 4,000 word. That's kind of the range that I tend to write in. But, you know, I'm not as obsessed with word count. I mean, obviously there's certain genres, my understanding is that they're expected to be larger. Fantasy, that sort of thing. This is, adult, contemporary fiction, with LGBTQ themes, that sort of thing. Who makes the rules on, how large something should be anyway? If it all works and is meant to be there, it's all works and meant to be there. An author that I follow on YouTube, her romance novels are very strong women's fiction elements in it too. I mean, her romance novels are 100,000 words, give or take. So, I mean, if I knew really how to write and expand and really get in there, I could probably easily write 80, 90, 100,000 word books. I mean, the first book was 84, 85,000 words. Again, multiple POV though, like multiple POV, 5 ultimately. This one's only 2, so it makes sense that this one to be short. But I don't like to overthink too much on word count. If there's one issue as a writer I have, it's sometimes I present myself with a problem in the narration, and then I just resolve it too quickly. I don't sit in the moment and really let the character reflect through interiority enough to let the reader sit in it and let the reader experience and feel it for themselves. I've gotten a lot better at that writing this book. I've gotten so much better. And that's part of why chapter 9 is so long, because there's a lot of interiority, but there were a lot of beats that needed to happen in chapter 9, because chapter 9 is basically Vivian really establishing her life in Atlanta, her new life in Atlanta, making new friends. So, and I was about to potentially reveal something that I ultimately decided not to. But there was so much that needed to happen. So much. A lot of writers might refer to that as a beat. But in writing, when you outline a beat is like, okay, so this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And then you got to fill it all in with sitting in the moment, interiority, and dialogue, that sort of thing. We're already pretty good. My Scrivener tells me I only need to write like 600 words a day. I'm giving a whole number to get this done by my deadline, which is July 30th, because my first book comes out on August 1st. So I always like the idea of having a draft of my second book ready to go for when the first book comes out. And I think we're going to meet that goal. We'll probably exceed that goal, honestly. So chapter 10 is looking good. Like I said earlier, it's about 2,400 words. I feel like we're getting close to the end. Vivian and Kyle and Ash just got done looking at a house and in Chastain Park. They're going to go look at another property. I don't think I'm going to show them looking at that other property. I don't think that's necessary. I've already shown them looking at this first property, which I know earlier I said, I don't know if she should have this first house, but it's been decided. She's going to get, this is the house she's going to buy. So I'm going to wrap this chapter up. And once this chapter's wrapped up, that'll wrap up this video. If anyone's curious, I have recorded 1 hour and 7 minutes of video so far right now. A bunch of that's going to get edited, but this is probably going to be a long video. So if you're still here after all this time, look at you being a rock star. You're awesome. So I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll debrief and talk about it. Okay, I have just finished drafting chapter 10. We are at 3,137 words for chapter 10. Today we have written exactly 1,500 words. And the total manuscript is now up to 36,899. 99 words. Sometimes I have to put on these little magnifiers to make sure I can see them right, because small text, sometimes my eyes blur. Yep, 36,899 words total in the manuscript. So we are done drafting chapter 10 for today. I think we're at a good place to stop with chapter 10. I can already tell this last little ending moment here is going to probably need to be polished a little bit, but first drafts are meant to be messy, that sort of thing. I'll be interested to see what kind of feedback that ChatGPT is going to give me about this chapter. So let me explain the process here. So I've finished drafting. I'm happy with it so far. I think it's definitely promising. I am going to be interested to see what ChatGPT says about pacing. I don't prompt. I don't have like a specific prompt or anything that I give the AI for every single chapter. I save all that for like my editing process. Like when I go back to developmentally edit, copy edit, line edit, that sort of thing, then I'll be more involved with like actual prompting. But otherwise with the chat bot, I'm just having a conversation. This is a tool, this is a writing partner, writer friend, whatever. That's how I interact with the ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste my entire manuscript into ChatGPT, which I'm doing that now. And I always say, here is my first draft, my completed first draft of chapter 10. And I'll say something like, I'm really happy with it. What do you think? Good pacing. anything missing, you know, and then I'll just, here's the draft, colon, and then I'll just paste it. And I'll just see what ChatGPT says. And it's doing it right now. It's going through it. And I'll share with you what it says here. Okay. So ChatGPT, a lot of people think that AI is just going to, you know, just tell you what you want to hear and so on and so forth. I've got my ChatGPT trained to, like, you know, to be honest with me and give me honest feedback. Like, don't just tell me the positives. You know, give feedback. It knows that I want that. It knows that I'm just not looking for, oh my God, this is so good, you're so amazing. No. Like, this is a constructive, like, partnership I have. So let's see. So it's already started off, like, it says this a lot of times. It'll say, like, I think this is the strongest chapter you've written so far, or one of the strongest chapters. Like, it said that to me a few times, which is nice, but I mean, it's being complimentary, but I do want to see, like, what it says. I mean, and it's very AI. Like, there's AI tells in this, you know, not because this, but because this, you know, not this, but that, like an AI tell type thing. So right away, it's saying that the pacing feels right, saying that it's a very clear progression. Okay, that's good. Nothing is feeling rushed or stalled. And, you know, okay, so it's understanding, like, what I drafted. That's great. Interesting. ChatGPT thinks that Millie is becoming a gravitational force, which is good. Yeah. Okay, good. So kind of, it's basically kind of validating for me that, okay, you know, there's certain moments that were, you know, that basically were earned via what you narrated, what interiority you showed, and what, you know, dialogue was said. And that the house is symbolic, which is nice. And symbolism I think, is very important in stories and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay, it's making comment. ChatGPT's made comments saying that Kyle feels more mature now than he did in the first book, A List of Reasons Why, which makes sense. We didn't really see a lot of Kyle in the first book. There is a moment between Kyle and his younger brother Derek in the first book that's really telling in a lot of ways, kind of their struggles with their parents. But it's nice that ChatGPT is realizing that, you know, that seems more mature. And ChatGPT agrees that the chapter ends exactly where it should. And let's see, now it's giving, so it's, you know, it's listing all the good. Now let's see what some feedback. It is talking about some pacing. So it says that the first half of the chapter is really focused on the house, and then the second half is very, like, focused on Millie. One thing I would think of, okay, so it's not saying that okay, so sometimes it gives feedback making me think that I need to make a change, but then it's just like, no, you don't need to make a change. You just need to realize that there's some stuff going on here, and you need to think about how those things are carrying the emotional weight of the chapter. Okay, so I thought it was going to give me, like, a pacing note here and tell me to maybe add more, but I mean, and if it did say that, I would have probably pushed back a little bit, or would have just not taken its feedback. I mean, I think that this is fairly well paced, but it's always nice to get, like, a second opinion. Okay, so it's not directly quoting. Oh, it is directly quoting. I did directly say that. Okay, yeah, right there. It was just quoting a line saying, like, what its favorite line was in the entire chapter. And there's a moment that Kyle just you know, quietly acknowledges, you know, that he's glad to have his mother around with him. And ChatGPT says it likes that. It's a big emotional step. I feel like that's not the first time that he's said that to her, though. So I'm going to have to go back and look at that, because that's one of those emotional moments that it should land more. But if it's, I think I might have had a moment like that already, so I have to go back. So that's a developmental note that I have to kind of keep in mind when I go back and developmentally edit. So that's kind of something that I know that, like, if I see Kyle admitting that he likes quietly admitting that he likes having his mother there, I probably only want that moment to happen once in the novel. If it happens twice, it kind of loses its meaning and its weight, if that makes sense. So I feel like I'm consciously thinking I might have already had that happen at some point. So then when I go back and developmentally edit this, I know I'll probably come back and throw a comment either in this chapter or the other one that I think might have that moment. We'll have to see. I may be wrong, but it definitely made sense in this chapter for him to say that. Let's see. And then it's just saying the pacing's good character work. The house hunting was interesting enough without overstaying. So, okay, so I didn't spend too much time with, house hunting. We've set up Millie strongly, good strong ending hook. Nothing major is missing. And then it's just telling me that the chapter belongs exactly where it sits in the novel. Okay, well, yeah. Doesn't feel like filler between big events. It feels like the necessary bridge between Vivian's new life beginning and Kyle finally learning the truth about who his mother really is. And that's exactly what chapter 10 needed to do. Good. So I've gotten some, mostly praises here. It's not pushing back on anything. And I'm sitting here kind of like, well, I'm sure there's something we can push back on. But I mean, I feel like if there was anything that I needed to look at, it would say, I think you need to look at here, that, or something like that. And it's not doing that. So I think we have a pretty good, strong draft of chapter 10. And a lot of that probably comes from, just the fact that, I have a lot more writing experience now, which is good. I have a low battery. Let me plug in my phone. All right, here we go. It's plugged in. Okay. Well, so chapter 10 is, we're done drafting. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to end this here. I may come back and do some more writing later. That'll be in a separate video. We'll just have to see. So again, thank you so much for sitting with me and joining me today. I'm so glad that you're here. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can know whenever I post a brand new video. Again, if I'm writing, I'm recording. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.